Hello, everyone. My name is Xavier Herit. I'm the brand ambassador for Grand Marnier in the United States. The Campari Academy and Grand Marnier are very excited to partner one more time with the Portland Cocktail Week on this new educational programming. For this special edition, I would like to welcome Naomi Levy, who is based in Boston. Her numerous awards and accomplishments include being named one of the Zagat 30 Under 30, earning the Star Chef Rising Star Award, also One Enthusiast, 40 Under 40, and being named Boston Best Bartender in the Boston Magazine in 2019. How are you doing, Naomi?
I'm great. Thank you so much. I'm really, really excited to be able to share with everybody.
So Naomi is going to share some old culinary techniques to bring big flavors to your cocktails. No special tool required for this session. So things you can make at home as well. She'll be demonstrating the old school method of the clarified meat punch, as well as making fresh fruit syrup, but also vinegar. Naomi, can you tell us more a bit about you and your career and what made you decide to go in this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in this business a really long time. Since I was 17 years old was when I first started working in restaurants, and I just quickly fell in love with the pace and the excitement and just getting to take care of people every day. And I was kind of hooked from there. It was one of those things where at first you're kind of doing it while you're pursuing other things, and then you realize, what if I've been pursuing other things for this ticks all the boxes for me. And so once I started kind of working in some nicer places and learning more about craft, that's when I really knew this was for me. People know me most from my time at Eastern Standard, kind of an institution here in Boston, where I was from 2010 to 2016. And kind of that's really where I think I earned my chops and learned a lot, and actually made clarified milk punch for the first time back in 2011 or whatever it was. So yeah, it's definitely a business, I think, like no other, and one that I have a ton of love for.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to have you today in this special session. Before we start the whole presentation, I'd like to bring a little refresher about Grand Marnier for everyone watching us right now. Grand Marnier, to me, is a brand which is rich in history and heritage. The distillery was first created in 1827, and at this time we were making fruit liqueurs, such as crème de cassis or crème of apricot, which was very popular back in the days. But everything started to change when Louis-Alexandre Marnier joined the team and created one of the first cognac blend with an orange liqueur, which was named Grand Marnier Cordon Rouge in 1880. Since this date, the recipe remained the same. The shape of the bottle remained the same, so we can recognize it very easily behind any bar. And I would like just to bring a few facts behind this bottle, maybe that everyone knew already, or maybe that you did not, but just in case. One thing pretty cool behind the shape of the bottle of Grand Marnier Cordon Rouge, there is a meaning. This is actually the shape of the cognac pot still. So this will be the swan neck. So one thing that I thought it was pretty awesome to know, since 1880 were the same bottle shape. Inside the bottle of Grand Marnier, we have 51% cognac on the Grand Marnier Cordon Rouge ratio from the 5 best terroirs. Another fact you should know, we source also oranges from the Caribbean islands. The orange is called the Big Aradia. We handpick the orange where they are still unripe, so green, and we peel them, let the skin dry on the floor on the ground with the Caribbean sun, and all the peels get shipped to the distillery in Cognac, where we're gonna make the orange liqueur. The last steps will be to blend the cognac and orange liqueur together. One more point I'd like to bring about Grand Marnier. Grand Marnier is versatile. Why? Because Grand Marnier is 80 proof. There's so many ways to enjoy Grand Marnier. Neat, on the rocks. As a modifier, we all know the Margarita is a very popular one, and still is. But there's so much more we can do. We can use Grand Marnier as a base spirit. Using 1.5 ounce of Grand Marnier works very well in a cocktail. I like to say it's having 2 ingredients in one bottle, a cognac and an orange liqueur. but also as a speed base, like using 1 ounce, like a grand old fashioned. Also, Grand Marnier has a very large portfolio, which I'm very proud to represent. We can see Grand Marnier Cordon Rouge everywhere, from a very casual bar to a much more high-end place. But we have also the Louise Alexandre that just been added to the portfolio last year, and also some higher cuvée with more rare cognac like the Centenaire, the 1880 or the Quintessence. But enough talking about Grand Marnier. I think Naomi has a lot of things to show us today. Very excited to be here. And please, Naomi, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Xavier. I have to say, hearing you talk about Grand Marnier in your wonderful French accent, it makes me just, love it so much more. So today we're going to be doing a bunch of different techniques that are really old techniques. These are techniques that are coming from, as early as the 1700s for the milk punch that we are going to be making, even earlier for things like vinegars, which probably just happened by accident. So all of the techniques that we're using, we're kind of going back to our old school kind of slow foods ways. We don't need really any special equipment. We don't need any special ingredients. There's no, something that you have to buy xanthan gum off the internet. All of this is stuff that you can easily find. And in that way, whether you're making them at home or whether you eventually are making them back in a bar, it can be a really great talking point with your guests, because it's something that you say, oh yeah, this thing that has all this cool flavor, it actually wasn't that hard to make. What all of these things do take is a little bit of patience, because none of them are quick. They all take time. They all take planning ahead. But once you do, you're going to wind up with some really, really great flavors. So we're going to make a milk punch from start to finish in this class. I'm going to do it bit by bit because milk punch does take a little while to make. We'll also be learning how to make a fresh fruit syrup as well as a fruit scrap vinegar. So let's go ahead and get our milk going and get the milk punch going. So milk punch, as I said, dates back to the 1700s, about 1711 is when we see the first recorded milk punch recipe. And then it gets kind of popularized by Benjamin Franklin about 20 years later or so. When we think about milk punch, obviously we think about milk. So we're going to start off with milk. We're making just a single bottle batch, but you can scale this up very easily. We're going to do 2 cups of milk. So I'm using whole milk here. And when I measure it, I'm actually going to go just under 2 cups. This is 1 3/4 cups. Here is my secret to milk punch. Now you all know my secret. I add a little cream to my milk punch. When they were making milk punch in the 1700s, they were not using the pasteurized milk that we have today. They were using raw milk, and raw milk always has a little cream on top. So I just top it off with a little heavy cream to get that added richness. And it's just going to help create such a beautiful, beautiful texture when it comes to our final product of milk punch. All right, so I'm gonna get this going on the stove.
Great, and if I may add one thing, Naomi, if anyone has questions, feel free to send your questions. We will reply to all your questions at the end of each cocktail segment. So Naomi is here to respond to any questions you may have, as well as I am.
Yes, it's true. All right, so I have my milk now on I have an induction burner, so this will go nice and fast. I'm not going to make you sit here and watch paint dry or milk get warm. It is important that we keep an eye on our milk. We don't actually want it to get to a point where it's bubbling over. You want to kind of go a little bit low and slow. I'm going to speed up the process just a little bit today so that we can keep this show on the road. But we don't want our milk to scald, and we don't really want our milk to boil over. We're bringing it to 180 degrees. So if you have a thermometer, it's great to just keep it in there. And as soon as it hits 180, you're going to pull it right off. If you don't have a thermometer, you can do it by sight, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's ready. It's basically where you just have all the kind of little bubbles forming, but it's not actually starting to boil yet, right? Boil is 212, so we want it just under the boil. So while our milk gets warm, we're going to make our milk punch base. So as I said, I'm just doing 1 bottle's worth today, and I'm using a 750 milliliter. we're going to be using Espolón tequila as our base for our milk punch. Get that guy right in.
Perfect tequila for our milk punch. Espolón is part of the Campari group, of the Campari family. So definitely also a great addition to Grand Marnier as well.
All right, now we're going to add our sugar. So we have our 750 mils of spirit, and we're going to do 2 cups of simple syrup. I'm going to be doing a strawberry simple syrup, which we're actually going to get to learn how to make in a little bit. So I'm going to do 2 cups of the strawberry simple syrup.
Look at this color.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
All right. 2 cups of my syrup. So you could use any seasonal fruits. Basically, strawberries would be perfect for the summer right now, correct? If you want to do a spice syrup, if you just want to do a plain syrup. What's really great about this recipe is that it's a great place to start, and you can kind of plug as you go. You can play around with mixed base. You can play around with, you know, mixing in some cordials, play around with whether you're using lemon or lime juice, you know, adding a different citrus in there as well. Though I would say you always need at least some lemon or lime juice. If you're using a different juice, you're going to need to acidify it because that acid is really, really important to the curdling process. So speaking of, I have some lime juice here, and we're going to do 1 cup of lime juice. So now you are probably thinking, I'm keeping my eye on the milk at the same time. It is almost ready. You're probably thinking, okay, she just did 2 parts sugar to 1 part sour. That sounds like a very sweet drink, but milk actually has acid in it as well. So we have to think that the milk is actually going to act as another level of acid in this drink, which is why we're actually at 2 parts sugar to 1 part simple. So I'm going to kind of move this camera over here so that you can see what the milk looks like. This is what I'm talking about when I say that milk is about ready. It has all those little bubbles. There's some steam going. My milk is ready. It's at 180 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and just pour my milk right into my citrus mixture. And I'm not going to whisk it. I don't want to stir it too much. I don't want to disturb the curds too much. I'm just going to give it a very light kind of once little stir. And then I'm going to add my last ingredient here, some nice fresh shaved cinnamon. And I'm just going to shave that right on top. So to be a true punch, right, the definition of punch is that we have spirit, citrus, sugar, water, and spice. So spice is an important part in our milk punch if we're making a true punch. All right, so you can already see that this is all like kind of curdly and
start separate, yes.
Right, it's already starting to separate. We're gonna let this kind of hang out for a little. We're gonna really let those curds form and become strong because they are the most important, they are the worker bee of the milk punch. So we wanna really let them get to where they're getting before we start the straining process. So I'm gonna put this aside. We're gonna come back to it. We're gonna learn how to properly strain our milk punch. We're not gonna be using cheesecloth. We're not gonna be using anything crazy, just a fine mesh strainer. And in the meantime, let's get going on that strawberry syrup I mentioned.
Sure, and do you need fresh juices from the same day for the punch, or it can be some older juices?
You don't. I think milk punch is a great way to use leftovers. I would say, you know, try not to go much more than day old for lime juice or 2 day old for lemon juice, right? We do still want this to be tasty, but since we are adding a hot product to it, that is going to, right, kind of scald our juice a little bit. So it's less important that it's super, super fresh. I actually mixed a little fresh squeezed juice with a little day old juice just to get to where I need to, but it's actually a great way to utilize your old juice is to turn it into milk punch. Just so what I would say.
Zero waste.
Exactly, zero waste. And you don't, you know, as long as you haven't turned your syrup already into a cordial, you want it to be separate from your simple syrup and only mix it right then because you want that juice to still to still have all of that acid in it, because that's what's curdling our milk. Cool.
Great.
All right. Let's make a little syrup. All right. So we are going to make a strawberry syrup. So this is a very, very simple recipe for a fresh fruit or vegetable syrup. The important part when you're choosing your fruit or vegetable is to choose something with a good water content to it. So strawberries or blackberries are great. Blueberries, not so much, right? Apples, absolutely. You know, pears, great. Bananas, no. You know, same thing with your vegetables, right? Your cucumbers, peppers, anything with a great water content. Maybe not broccoli. Why you would want to make broccoli syrup? I make pretty out there cocktails, but that's pretty out there even for me. So, so just choose something with a really nice water content. When you are cutting your fruit, you want to cut it into as small pieces as you're not going to lose your mind doing this a whole bunch of times, right? So if you just cut it into fourths, that's definitely not small enough. You want to go just a little bit further, because the smaller your pieces are, the more surface area you have and the faster this is going to go. We are basically using the water in our fruit to create the simple syrup with our sugar. So through the magic of television, I have already chopped up a bunch of strawberries. So I'm just going to cap this off so you don't have to sit here and watch me chop strawberries for 10 minutes. I'm sure that wouldn't be the most riveting class that Portland has put on. So really, really, really easy. I here just have 1 quart by volume of fresh chopped strawberry. Just going to put them right into my Cambro. Apparently need a little help getting out. There we go. And then to that, I'm simply going to add 1 quart of granulated sugar. And now I'm just going to give it a really good stir. I want to fully incorporate the sugar with the strawberries, making sure that those strawberries are fully coated, getting all of that sugar that kind of sinks to the bottom. And that's it. That's all you're doing. Now the strawberries and the sugar are going to do the work for you. At this point, we're going to keep it out of the fridge. We are going to kind of stir it regularly over the course of the day. So here is one that I started just about 1 hour ago. So you can see already in just an hour, do we see how liquidy that is, right? It already, my sugar is so kind of saturated. It's already really, really, really liquidy. So I'm gonna just kind of leave this out, and over the course of my day, I'll kind of go to it and stir it to just kind of prevent that sugar from sinking to the bottom, and just to kind of keep it working and keep it going. Overnight, so, I will put it, oh yeah, please.
So my question, can you remind us the ratio sugar strawberries?
Absolutely. It's just by volume, 1 quart of strawberries and 1 quart of sugar. So equal parts, just equal like part. You were making any kind of simple syrup. We're just sort of using the fruit in place of the water.
Yeah.
So here you can see after an hour already, it's getting really, really nice and liquidy. Overnight, I do put it in the fridge. I don't want this to get too warm. We don't want it to start fermenting. So I will put it in the fridge overnight. And the next day, we have something that looks like this. All right, do we see this? It has all this beautiful liquid. Before I'm ready to strain, I'm gonna have it out of the fridge. I'm gonna bring it back to room temperature, because as you can probably see, there's some kind of sugar now stuck at the bottom. So we're just gonna kind of give it one more stir to incorporate that last bit of sugar and really get that to dissolve. And you can see these strawberries, they're basically dehydrated. So they actually will make a really fun garnish, or I like to put them on my ice cream when I'm just making this at home. It's a really great ice cream topping. But you can also then dry them out as a garnish. You can blend them up. to make kind of, puree that's a little bit more sugary, because there's a lot of sugar. So you can see we have this beautiful, beautiful liquid. There is no water in here whatsoever. So all you are getting is this pure, fresh strawberry flavor. So we're gonna go ahead and strain it out.
So Naomi, using your technique compared to warming up strawberry, sugar, and water, what would be the comparison? Would be more bright, more fruity on your side, correct?
Exactly. So when we're using, if you think about biting into a fresh, cold strawberry, right? As opposed to strawberry jam. Once we put our things on the stove, we're cooking them. So we're creating cooked flavors. And if that's the flavor you're looking for, great. But if you want a flavor that is just that pure fruit, that pure fresh flavor, this is really the way to go to do it without any heat and also without any water. Water is just diluting flavor. Now, once we strain this, you will see it is a fairly kind of viscous syrup. It is pretty thick. And it kind of also depends on the water content of whatever fruit or vegetable that you use. So if you do want to thin it just a little bit for texture reasons, you can add just a touch of water. Another thing that you can do to thin it is you can make a shrub and add a little vinegar. And we're going to learn how to make vinegar from scratch as well. So now you see we have this really, just look at that color. I mean, so gorgeous, right?
It's beautiful, red, vibrant, very vibrant.
Right? And I wish you could taste this because it just tastes like summer. It just tastes like biting into a strawberry. It has such a beautiful, beautiful, fresh flavor. And then all of these strawberries that I now have kind of in here, let's see if I can show it without getting syrup everywhere, but in here, all these nice kind of dried strawberries are, just a tasty byproduct. I actually, at places I've worked before that have a pastry program, they're also really great on cheesecake. Give them to your pastry department. They'll do something fun with it for sure.
Awesome.
So it's really a very simple product. It just takes a little time, and you can scale this up as well. It might, if you scale up, you might need 2 days on it. It might need 48 hours instead of 24. Just do the same thing, pull it out of the fridge during the day, keep an eye on it, give it a stir every little once in a while when it, when you catch it in the corner of your eye, and then just refrigerate it overnight. And then of course, once it's done, you're gonna wanna store it in the fridge.
Great. I don't think we have any questions so far, but I like the fact that you show us so far the most simple way to make syrups that just does not require too many tools. Just a scale, not even a scale. I mean, or a cup and a Cambro. So,
and you don't even, if you don't have a Cambro, I mean, whatever you got, a bowl and some plastic cup, whatever you have. Really, you're letting the sugar and the fruit do its thing. You're letting, with all of these, you're letting the ingredients do what they naturally want to do, and you're just kind of pushing them in the right direction. So, speaking of, if we bring back our milk punch here, we can see, look at that. It has separated. We can see the top part are all these beautiful curds. So it is ready. Our curds are ready to get to work. And so we are going to start the straining process. So as I mentioned, we are not using any cheesecloth. We are not using a super bag. We are not using a, rotovap. We're not using anything but a fine mesh strainer. That's it. You want something that has kind of that conical V shape. I'm using this kind of smaller one because it's going to hang higher than kind of that big one I just used for the strawberry, which is going to be important because we never want the bottom of the strainer to touch what is in the bottom here. So what we're going to do now is start the straining process. And this part of the straining process is about building up the curds on the inside of our strainer, because it's the curds that are actually doing the clarifying, not the strainer. So when you just try and push it through, the finest micron bag that you can, you're not actually clarifying it, you're just straining it. And true milk punch is clarified, and it's those curds that do it for us. We need those proteins to do the clarification. It's also what makes it shelf stable. So if you do this true old school clarification process, your milk punch is actually shelf stable. And in the fridge, it keeps basically forever, and out of the fridge, it's gonna keep for, you know, a few months at the very least as well, but only if you really let it do its thing, be patient, take its time. So really the beginning process is about building up those curds. So we're gonna kind of slowly fill our strainer, and we're gonna, you see how it's just kind of flowing right through. That's fine, because we're gonna do this a few times and kind of go back and forth between our two containers here so that we're building up those curds inside the strainer. And this part doesn't really take too long. When you have a bigger batch as well, your container is going to fill and kind of stop moving so quickly, fairly quickly. But at this point, it's just kind of a back and forth till we get a nice kind of slow down. So right now, we still have a good amount of liquid kind of coming out the sides of the strainer, right? It's coming out still fairly quickly from the bottom of the strainer as well. We're just gonna kind of keep going back and forth a little. You see there's like little leaks on the sides. We're letting those curds really build up inside the strainer. And we can already see that it's starting to slow down a bit, which is great. That's what we want.
So you can make any size of batch using, it's the same concept, yes? There will be no issues. Yeah.
At Eastern Standard, I used to do this as 22 quart Cambros. We would have 3 or 4 of them lined up with a bunch of kind of the bigger strainers as well. And we would do it, I think, the equivalent of 12-liter batches at a time, just making a ton of milk punch.
So it's a good workout.
It is a good workout, yeah. So this part is probably, aside from, watching our milk, and aside from, putting our things together, this is sort of the most active that we get with this. So this is a small batch, so there aren't as many curds to work with, which is why I'm working with this smaller strainer as well. But when you're making a big batch, you'll be fine in one of those big strainers. And also, the longer you kind of let your milk punch sit and those curds form, the better, because you're just going to help create these bigger curds that are going to really line the inside of your strainer really well. So this guy, at this point, I've gone back and forth a few times. I feel like I've kind of built up a decent amount of curds on the inside. Because it's a smaller batch, kind of the top of my strainer doesn't really have too many curds in it. So when I strain now, I'm just going to be conscientious of that and just be kind of pouring to the line where I can see the curds have gone. So I'm going to kind of treat this as a smaller strainer, if that makes sense. So you can see now it's starting to kind of slow down.
Yeah.
We have this one single stream going. We're going to let this hang out for a little bit. What we want is right now, and it's probably a little hard to see there, but what we want is to see that stream starts to look clear. That's how we know that it's starting to do its thing. So until then, it's kind of going a little slower. You can see it's starting to go, one drop at a time. That's great. I'm going to kind of keep just topping it off a little at a time, watching kind of to see, all right, there's still a little bit coming out of the sides, but that's totally fine because the curds are still kind of building up. They're creating this barrier, which is going to be doing the clarification. It's not the strainer doing the clarification, it's the curds. Cool.
So once the curd is already doing its job, how many more times do you need to pass it through the filter?
So we'll come back to this once we see that it's looking nice and clear. That's what we're looking for at this point, right? We're looking for the curds to start working. Right now, it's not quite there yet, right? It's still coming out pretty quickly. it still definitely looks pretty milky as well. And so we do want to let it do its thing. So I'm going to just kind of keep topping off slowly. When you're making a bigger batch, you can kind of set it and forget it a little bit. But once it's nice and clear, then we're going to move this over to a nice, fresh, clean Cambro that doesn't have all these curds in it. It can be very easily sort of contaminated with curds. So we want to do this very, very carefully. And then at that point, all of this kind of still milky looking product, I'll put all in one Cambro, and then we'll just keep kind of slowly topping off once it actually starts to clarify. All right, let's give this one more little top off.
It looks already very tasty.
Right? All right, I'm going to very, very carefully slide this aside so we can let it do its thing. And hopefully it'll start to do its thing in the small amount of time that we have. We are kind of rushing this process a little bit. I would usually cook the milk slower. I would usually, let those curds sit for a little bit longer. This class is called Slow It Down, but we don't want you all here not seeing things happen. So let's chat about fruit scrap vinegar.
And Naomi, sorry to interrupt you. Before we go to the fruit and vinegar segment, we have a question for you.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to make a vegan meat punch?
So I haven't, but my brother, who's actually also a bartender, has had success with coconut cream and coconut milk. It's not going to be a true milk punch, however, in that it is going to wind up being a little bit more of a strained product than necessarily a clarified product, because it is a unique element of the milk proteins that really allows it to clarify. But you can actually create something flavor-wise that is going to be very similar. It's just not going to be quite as crystal clear, and it's not going to be as shelf stable.
Great. Thank you for this nice response. It was a very good question, actually. I never thought about it.
Yeah. All right.
That's it?
Yeah, perfect. All right, so you mentioned zero waste, right? We talked about using our old lemon or lime juice. So making fruit scrap vinegar is a really great kind of zero waste thing that we can do. Right here, I have all of the tops of the strawberries that I chopped up earlier. Usually, right, we would just toss these in the trash, but we're actually going to use these to make a vinegar. So whenever we're making a vinegar, I highly recommend doing it in something like a ball jar, something nice, thick glass. If otherwise, you could use a Cambro. What I wouldn't use is like a quart container, anything that is thin plastic like that, because we're essentially, not essentially, we are making alcohol. So there is some volatility there. So using kind of a more secure container is the move. We are going to go ahead and just start off and throw our fruit scraps right into our ball jar. This is about a cup or so. You don't have to be perfectly exact with this, just whatever scraps you have from making whatever you made. Of my strawberry tops, you can use, apple peels. I have one where I had some peaches that were a little bruised, so the bruised parts of the peaches. Just don't use anything that's molding, or is that kind of scrap. We will still want to make sure that is something that we would put into our bodies. We don't want this to be contaminated with mold. I also highly recommend using organic if you can. There are some preservatives and sprays that they put that can actually hinder the fermentation process. So if you're using organic, you're just going to have a little bit more of a chance of success. So all we're going to do now is, here I have 4 cups of, this is distilled water. Once again, our tap water sometimes has different additives in it that can hinder fermentation. So if you just go to the grocery store and buy like a jug of the distilled water, it's not very expensive, and it will kind of just help you have a little bit more success. So to my water, I'm adding just a little bit of sugar, just about 1/4 of a cup of granulated sugar. And I'm going to give that a stir just to dissolve that sugar in the water. And also sneakily top off my milk punch.
Let's don't forget the milk punch.
Not forget the milk punch. Actually looking really good. You can't see it off camera, but it's getting there. All right, so now I'm gonna just pour my sugar water over my fruit scraps. And we're not gonna seal this with the metal lid. We wanna keep this open, but we don't want it to be filled with little creepy crawlies. So we're gonna cover it with a little cheesecloth. If you don't have cheesecloth, a clean dish towel will work really well. Or if you have a super bag, but not cheesecloth, you can kind of put your super bag on it. Anything that's breathable, but has small enough holes that it's gonna keep fruit flies out, because not gonna lie, it attracts fruit flies. They love fermenting smells. So I'm just gonna cut a little piece of cheesecloth. And actually, I'm gonna cut that in half again because I need an even smaller piece. Right on top. And then I'm just going to secure that with a rubber band. That's it. Now I wait, right? This is the slowest of all the slow things that we're doing today. Every day, I'm gonna just give this a little agitation, like so. You don't even need to open it and stir it, just kind of agitating it. This keeps the berries from kind of the ones that are just staying at the top. If they just stay at the top with some air and kind of wet, you could get mold. So we want to avoid that. So just by agitating it once a day, simply like that, you're going to prevent that from happening. You can also, if you're not using a ball jar, say you are using a Cambro, alternatively, you could put a plate on top to kind of weigh your fruit scraps down as well. That will work just fine too. So after about a week, this guy has been going just about 8 days now. You can see all of these gorgeous bubbles, right? So it looks pretty gnarly, but you see all these bubbles, and these bubbles means we have alcohol, we have fermentation, right? So when it comes to making alcohol, right, yeast eats sugar and poops out alcohol, but also CO2. So these bubbles are our sign that we have success, we have fermentation, we have alcohol. Alcohol is the first step to making vinegar. It's going to be very low in terms of the alcohol content, probably not much more than like 3-4%, maybe 5%, depending on how ripe your scraps were. But it's going to be very low alcohol, and this is a great first sign. So this happens right around anywhere from as early as 3 days in to about a week. We're going to start seeing those bubbles, and that's really what we're looking for to say, cool, we've had success, we have fermentation, we got a little hooch going. All right, so then the next step is just a couple of weeks later, you're gonna see I no longer have any bubbles going. That means the fermentation process has stopped. We have all the alcohol that we're going to have. Vinegar is made when alcohol ferments into acetic acid. That's what we want. So we started by making the alcohol, and now we're gonna let it go past and turn into vinegar. So at this point, and this is optional, but I do recommend it, I'm going to actually kind of pull out my fruit scraps, right? I don't really need them anymore. They've done their work. We have fermentation. So using either, a spoon or a fork actually works really well as well. We're gonna pull these scraps right out, and that's just going to help with the next step, which is when our mother is born. All right, so you hear about a mother a lot. Everyone's been making sourdough during quarantine, right? A mother is also a really important part of vinegar making. It's basically this kind of slimy cap that's going to happen on top of our vinegar. And if you still have all your scraps in there, your scraps are just going to get caught up in that slime, which is fine. You can do that. But what it will prevent you from doing is saving your mother, which is a great thing you can do that will actually expedite your vinegar making in the future. So I pulled out most of the big chunks. You don't have to be like super precise with this. I'm not actually straining it through anything because I want to keep all of that goodness in there, because that's just going to help when it comes to the mother. So once I have pulled out all these guys, we'll see very shortly that, so I move this guy around a little bit, but you might be able to see kind of in the close up in the side here, there is this kind of gelatinous sort of cap that it kind of sunk a little because I was moving things around. You can see this kind of jelly-like substance, right? That's the mother, right? That's what we want. So once we see that forming, we know we have vinegar, we have this beautiful fermentation happening, and the mother we can now actually use to start other vinegars. So at this point, if the vinegar, this vinegar has been sitting about 6 weeks, that's probably about the least amount of time that I'm gonna let my vinegar sit. And you can just kind of taste it and taste to see, okay, is this where I want it acid wise? It can sit for up to 6 months. You can really let it go and just kind of taste it along the way and you know, pull it when you're like, all right, I like the way this tastes. Don't let it go too far, have confidence and grab it. So I'm gonna strain a little bit of my vinegar off my mother. Now, if you're like, great, this was a fun project that I did one time and I'm never gonna do it again, just strain out the mother, toss it out, whatever. If you're like, this was great, I'm gonna keep making vinegar, it's a great way for me to do things, then you're not gonna strain your entire vinegar. You wanna leave about a third in and pour carefully so that the mother stays in the jar. You can see, oh, do you see that little goop hanging?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's the mother. We wanna keep her in there. All right, so I basically strained what I can. This was just a small batch that I made, and I wanna leave the rest in here. This will now become basically my starter, like we have sourdough starter, for future vinegars. What I'll do is I'll get that fermentation part started, and then I'll actually strain that once I'm ready to pull it off the strawberries into my vinegar mother that still has a little vinegar in here, right? This is basically my starter. And you just can kind of keep doing that, keep going. It's just gonna help create your vinegar a little bit faster. And is that kind of same idea as that sourdough idea. So I just strained my vinegar through a super bag. You can use a little cheesecloth, you can use a coffee filter, you know, just anything that's really nice and fine mesh. You can see it still has this kind of really nice kind of cloudy color to it. It smells so good as well.
Can you still test the can you test the strawberry still through the vinegar?
Yes. So what's nice is so what's really nice, I'm gonna give it a little taste. So all right, that is like drinking vinegar. So it's got this really, really nice acid, and the strawberry isn't overwhelming, right? It's not like, oh, this tastes like that syrup we just made, but it's there. It's there in kind of a nice, subtle way. I definitely recommend, you know, using it in conjunction maybe with another strawberry product if you're trying to make something super strawberry. But if you want something as a really nice back note, then it'll work really well as well. And actually, the more I'm talking, the more the strawberry is kind of coming through, right? You get hit with that acid first, and then kind of that kind of fruit flavor comes through. But it definitely has a very different flavor profile from, say, an apple cider vinegar or a sherry vinegar, wine vinegar that you would buy off the shelves. It does have a lot more kind of fruit components and is just it's just really beautiful. And kind of fresh tasting. You can taste how fresh it is. At this point, our vinegar that's been strained off the mother, you could preserve it, or you can just throw it in a bottle and put it in the fridge. I recommend refrigerating your homemade vinegars, just in case something went through, then it doesn't over ferment anywhere past where you wanted it. And by putting it in the fridge, you can assure that it'll do that. You can also, turn it into a shrub by mixing it with your syrup as well. All right, so going back real quick to our milk punch.
And actually, I had a question regarding the shrub. Someone was asking if we can use peach scraps to make to make the vinegar. Sorry.
Absolutely, any fruit scraps will work. I actually have one with nectarines at home right now. So any scraps that you can. The pits are fine to throw in there as well. So just throw in the scraps. You want a little bit more of the fruit than just like say pits, but yes, that will 100% work.
Very good. And it has to be always fruit, correct?
Always fruit. I bet certain vegetables would work. I have not personally tried it, but I bet some vegetables would work if they have a high enough sugar content, like a carrot maybe. Carrot scraps, you might want to add a little more sugar than a quarter of a cup, since, but otherwise. All right, so our milk punch now, I'm going to be careful, I don't want to move this too much, is going just one little drop at a time. You can barely even see it. So at this point, it is clarifying. I'm going to move it over to my nice fresh Cambro. And this is where it's now going to live. And I'm going to keep topping it off little by little, and just let this guy very, very, very slowly do its thing. All right. So while we get enough drips for a drink, this usually, takes about 24 hours, I would say, where you're kind of just keeping an eye, every couple hours, go top it off before you go to bed at night. Just make sure it's filled as high as you can fill it, whether that's all the way to the top because you have enough curds filling your entire strainer, or if it's how mine is, which is about halfway up, because that's where my curds really are, then just make sure it's filled, and you can just leave it overnight. I do leave it at room temperature, just make sure your room is climate controlled. You don't want it to be getting, into 80 degrees or anything like that, because as I said, this is, once it's clarified, it is shelf stable. So it is fine to let this drip at room temp. What I then usually do, just to be safe, is any of my kind of sludgy stuff that hasn't gone through the strainer yet overnight, I'll just throw it in the fridge, and then in the morning, I'll take it back out to top off my strainer and keep it going, especially if I'm making large batches, which might take a couple days. All right, so
it's all about patience.
It's all about patience. All of these things are all about patience, right? Like if we just have a little patience, we can let the things do what they want to do with actually very little labor on our part, just time. And we're going to create these really, really gorgeous flavors that you just can't really get by rushing it. So while our milk punch slowly makes a cocktail for us, let's make a couple cocktails with the ingredients that we've already made. So the first cocktail that I'm gonna make is a smash. So a smash is one of my favorite summertime, really anytime cocktails, but particularly summertime cocktail. And my, there it is. A summertime cocktail, and we're gonna make a Grand Marnier smash. I love using Grand Marnier as a base spirit. It is 40%. So it does stand up, it does hold up, and it's a really fun way, I think, to drink Grand Marnier. And so we're gonna do a fun smash with it. So I'm gonna start off with my lemon and cut it into quarters. Toss it right in my tin. And then a little mint. Since this isn't actually an open bar, I just have like a, grocery store thing of mint rather than like the, blanched and iced and and that whole jazz. So I'm just gonna take the mint leaves off one sprig in there. And then the classic smash just uses a plain simple syrup, but I'm gonna go ahead and use this beautiful strawberry syrup we made just for a little extra summer flavor. And I'm gonna do 3/4 of an ounce of my strawberry syrup. All
That sounds
right.
like a good combo.
Right? I know. I mean, orange and strawberry, come on.
You can go wrong.
So you can't go wrong. And cognac, I mean, it's just like all of the things. And mint, I mean, it's just the summer in a glass. It's dangerous. So of course, last but not least, we're gonna do 2 ounces of Grand Marnier. Oh wait, I lied. Sorry. He distracted me with the compliments. First, we're gonna muddle this up. Before we put in the Grand Marnier, we're gonna go ahead and muddle our lemon, mint, and strawberry syrup. When it comes to muddling, I see a lot of people like they really go after it. It's not necessarily the place to get all of your anger out of the day. We want to be pretty gentle because we don't want to get any of those bitter flavors from the pith of the lemons. And also if you over muddle your mint, it's going to start to get an anise flavor. So just go gentle and just kind of press the juice out of the fruit. That's all we're looking to do. All right, now that we've done that, we're gonna go ahead and add our 2 ounces of Grand Marnier. All right. Give this a little shake, no ice.
Okay.
Just to incorporate everything. And then, since I don't have any ice, all I need is a tea strainer. I'm gonna strain this all out. Oh, look at that color.
Yeah.
Right? If this goes out in like a bar or a restaurant, you know that everybody's gonna be like, oh, I want that one. And then I'm just gonna use the bottom of my tin to kind of gently press to make sure I get all of those juices out. All right, now I'm going to top this off with a really nice mound of crushed ice. If you don't have crushed ice, you can use a loose bag or something. This is where you get your aggression out. You can crush up your cubed ice. Save your aggression for your ice, not your lemon and mint. All right, and then I will garnish this lovely with a nice bouquet of mint, giving it a little slap, bring out all those flavors. And we have our strawberry Grand Marnier smash. That's just like the freshest strawberry flavor with that beautiful orange. It's just, I'm gonna take a sip. Why am I so puffy?
I just want one right now.
Oh, I wish I could just pass this through.
Yes, please.
To you because it goes down a little too easy almost.
And I think it's one nice way to showcase that we can use Grand Marnier as a base spirit because it's a cognac base and it's 80 proof and it looks delicious. I have a few questions for you, Naomi. The first one regarding the smash, could you use just fresh lemon juice? It would taste different compared to muddle or?
Yeah, the flavor changes slightly because
Okay.
when you are muddling the fresh fruit, you're also getting the oils from the skin, but not so much so that like I'd be like, throw it away. Not going to be any good.
Yeah.
If you are, I would just do 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice. But otherwise, you know, if you have lemon juice, you probably had lemons at some point. So I would definitely recommend doing the muddling. If for some reason you don't have a muddler at home, the back of a wooden spoon, not the spoon side, but the back side, I find works really well. And that's also, you could take, if you don't have crushed ice, you can take some kitchen towels and wrap it around your ice and use that same spoon to just thwack and crush yourself some ice. So yeah, the flavor is different, but not, you know, so radically so that I would say don't do it.
It's more interesting to get the oil. I had a question regarding,
yeah.
I had another question, but back to your vinegar that just came not long ago. While making the vinegar, if you get some molds, do you need to dump the whole batch, or can you just strain it?
Yeah.
Or can you prevent it from from the mold to forming?
Yeah, so to prevent the mold from forming in the first place, that's why it's important to agitate. Also
Okay.
to make sure that the fruit that you used didn't have any mold, right? That you're using nice fresh fruit. As well, making sure that you had rinsed your fruit before you started cutting it. That was a step we didn't do because I had already pre-cut my fruit and rinsed it earlier. All of these things and that kind of agitation, most importantly, is what's going to prevent the mold from happening. But I did have one mold on me. It still happens sometimes. And you should just dump it. Even though it's alcohol and this, that, and the other, I think for safety, you never know. I'd say just get rid of it. Plus, you know, it was scraps you were going to throw away anyway. So kind of no harm done.
Yeah. You don't want to risk it, basically.
Yeah, you don't want to risk it, especially if this is something you're actually going to serve in a bar, then 100% throw it out. And even for yourself, throw it out.
Excellent. Yeah. I think that's it for now for the questions. Thank you very much, Naomi.
Absolutely. Okay, so next, so I'm actually not a huge drinker, so I'm always looking for great things that I can enjoy that don't have any alcohol, especially in the summer when you're outside, you want something really refreshing. So I'm just gonna make a very simple shrub and soda for the days where you want something that's no ABV. This is very easily turned into ABV. Just add whatever, preferably white spirit, or honestly, Grand Marnier would be delicious in this too, into it, and you have something alcoholic. But I'm gonna make a non-alcoholic version for myself right now. So I'm gonna be using just 3/4 of an ounce of my strawberry syrup and 3/4 of an ounce of my strawberry vinegar. And I do like just a little squeeze of lemon. So I'm just gonna do just a little squeeze of lemon, soda water, and of course keep it all nice and cold with my ice. And you have a really simple NA. You can, you know, zhuzh this up if you want. You could throw, let's zhuzh it a little. I could throw a little mint in here as well. You can make this by the pitcher and have it be something where people can add alcohol to it if they'd like, or leave it NA if they would prefer something NA. So you can create something for, you know, I guess people aren't having a ton of guests at their houses right now, but when you do, or at your bar, it's just a great thing to have, to be able to offer something more than just, you know, a Coca-Cola or soda to a guest that's looking to either take a little break or doesn't imbibe for one reason or another. So this guy, I'm gonna take a little, it's so refreshing. The strawberry flavor is just like out of control. This just tastes like if you liquefied strawberry and made it light and bubbly, this is what it is right here. It is just so refreshing, so beautiful. It tastes so fresh. It's really something simple that will absolutely wow people because of that really, really big strawberry flavor that comes all the way through, even in the acid in here as well. So we just have our simple strawberry shrub and soda that we made with the vinegar we made from scratch and the strawberries that we made and all of that.
And I think it's a nice touch. You always need 1 or 2 non-alcoholic cocktail recipe for people who don't drink alcohol. Not everyone drink alcohol, or not everyone is in the mood to drink alcohol every day. So, you know, there's a time for everything.
Exactly. All right.
So how is this clarified punch coming up now?
Look at this.
Look at this color.
Look at this color. All right. So this is not as clear as I would like it right now. I think I rushed it a little bit for you guys, but you can still see that, you know, it is this nice light pink. The stuff that's coming out now is even clearer. Let me grab another glass so you can see this that is dripping right now. When you look into this glass, it looks like It looks like there isn't even anything in there because it is so, so, so crystal clear. I promise you there is a little liquid in that glass. It is just crystal, crystal clear. This at this point, and I can see it in there, I would probably have moved it to another clean Cambro because we kind of pushed it a little bit and it wasn't quite as clear as I wanted. And now what's coming out is just like beyond crystal clear. It basically looks like water is what's coming out. And that's really, 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 really what we're looking for. But this one's still gonna taste super delicious. So that's gonna be the one that I taste while I let the rest of this go overnight. But you can see this one. I mean, it is just,
Yes,
there's
totally
probably
clear.
about a, right? It is just so, 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 so clear. And that's really what we're looking for. We're looking to be able to see through this
So
liquid.
yeah,
Yeah,
for
and
everyone,
that's
for everyone who's trying to make the same recipe, let's say they come the same results with, they still have a bit this clouded milk punch, they can put the liquid again through the strainer, correct? We can pass it again and again.
exactly. And sometimes it's hard to tell. Like when I moved it over, because I was like, all right, it's moving slow. Sometimes it's hard to tell if it's actually at this point, right? And so once you start getting a little liquid in there, you'll see, oh, you know what? It wasn't actually quite there. So I would just kind of take this, put it back with my other stuff. Actually, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. And then I would give this a little wipe to make sure there's no curds left in it, kind of contaminating the rest of the bath. Actually, do that. Give that a little wipe. And then I would go ahead and move my strainer back in. So really that only set me back like what, 10 minutes, right? And now I know for sure that what's coming out is super, super crystal clear. And that happens quite a bit where you move it a little too early, you'll see pretty quickly, it won't take that long for you to go, oh, that's still a little cloudy. You just move it again. You don't have to strain everything twice, right? Really, the kind of going back and forth is just till it gets to that clear point, and then everything's just going through once because now the curds are doing their job. And actually, if you can see this, I mean, look at that.
Yes, beautiful,
right? Crystal.
Crystal,
Crystal,
yes.
crystal clear. That's what we are looking for, right? This guy isn't quite, you can see the difference, right? I mean, look at that. Waiting just an extra 5-10 minutes. This is what I want when I'm served milk punch, not this, right? This isn't there. I'm gonna pour this right back into my strainer and I have my nice, beautiful, clear milk punch.
Does it taste different when it's not very clear?
When it's not what?
The new version you have, does it taste different from the clouded one?
The taste isn't going to be a radical difference. However, the important part is that this is now, I can feel confident that this one is now fully clarified and stable, where the other one, which still had a little bit of curds, that's not going to be. That could be volatile. It could be something that if let sit around too long actually will go bad. And one of the great things about milk punch is it's a preservation technique. So, you know, flavor-wise, there's not going to be a huge difference. I dumped that one already, but texture-wise also, just in terms of the way it feels in your mouth, there is a difference for sure. And then, of course, just in terms of kind of safety and having it be really a true clarified milk punch is going to be the thing. I think that there's nothing that wows, you know, someone more than putting something that looks this clear in front of them, and yet they have this kind of creamy, silky texture going on. It's kind of a little bit of a, you know, mind game when you drink something like this and you still have that, because the curds are gone, but what's left in the glass is the whey. So this does still have milk in it. If there's a milk allergy, if you're lactose intolerant, it's not probably for you. And you know, as we talked about, vegan as well. So, so it creates this really, really beautiful texture, but still kind of refreshing at the same time. So it's just such a fun product that you can have whether it's at home or, in your bars in a much larger scale.
I mean, the good thing is if you have a busy bar, most of the preparation is happening behind the scene. So busy or not busy, during the service, it takes 2 seconds to take the bottle and pour it. How would you serve it, by the way? How would you serve your punch?
Yeah, so what I usually do is I keep the milk punch chilled. So keep it in the fridge, and then it's basically good to go. If you have a large cube of ice, I love serving it over a large cube because it just like keeps it nice and cold without diluting it too much. You don't need to shake it or stir it or anything like that. It is perfectly delicious just from the fridge into the glass or over a large cube. Yeah, it's basically good to go. Though the slow part is the behind the scenes, but for service, it's actually the fastest drink you can make because it's already done.
So for service, the milk punch is your best friend.
Absolutely.
When you're busy.
Exactly. And honestly, it's like, at this point, I'm just walking away from this, right? So this is going slow, but I can go do something else. I don't have to sit here and watch this drop by drop. And I'll show you, it really is, drop by drop, we can see it going through very, very slowly. I just need to, remember, hey, every couple hours, I'm going to go check and kind of top it off. If ever, you totally forgot about it and it is so that there's only the curds in the strainer, I do recommend just putting the strainer over a fresh Cambro just to make sure that nothing dried out too much and you've got any cracks. The worst thing in the world is when you accidentally spill some curded milk punch into your beautiful clarified milk punch, because you can't undo that. So you do need to be careful. What I usually do also is, every once in a while I'll pull off the beautifully clarified stuff, get that in the fridge, get it separate so I know nothing can happen to it. But just, be cautious, keep an eye on it. And you'll have this beautiful, beautiful crystal clear milk punch.
Do you see clarified milk punch more popular nowadays compared to when you started when did you start to make your first milk punch? You said the first one you made.
I started the milk punch program at Eastern Standard in, I think, 2011. And it was definitely something that was just bartenders were starting to kind of rediscover and learn about. I honestly cannot remember how I learned about it, and so I'm sure someone's mad at me right now because they're like, "I told you." But I was super interested in doing it this old school way. And sometimes it takes a little practice, but if you really follow these things to a T, you'll get those nice curds. If you overmix it, your curds are going to be too small and it's not going to ever really clarify. So, you get good at it, you get a hand at it. But yeah, back in 2011, 2012, we were the only place with milk punch on a menu that I knew of. And especially here, at least here in Boston. Now you see it around, a little bit more, and people kind of have heard of it, or maybe they don't know how to make it, but they know what it is, and are interested. And there's even now, a little bit of a following in terms of the guests that are coming into your bar who get really excited when they see you have a clarified milk punch as well. So yeah, I would say it's definitely something that, it's fun because enough people know about it and get excited about it that, it's a fun thing to have, but not everybody's going to put in the time to make it. So it still can feel like a really fun, unique product for you to have as well.
Awesome. That's not exciting. I just want to try it right now.
I know. I really do wish that I could, that I could just write through the screen. But yeah, here now we have like a really nice bit, so you can really see. That's in however long we were talking. That's how much milk punch we got. So you can see that it's a very slow process. I'm guessing that's about an ounce and a half, maybe ounce and a half of milk punch in the 5 to 10 minutes, whatever it was we were talking. So it is a slow one. But you don't have to sit there for it. So that's the good part. And then you have this like really, really gorgeous. Nothing's going to be this clear. Nothing's going to give you this kind of clarity in your milk punch, like doing it the old school way and letting the curds do the clarifying.
So we have one more question for you from the people watching us. I've seen other bartenders play with cereal milk punch. Have you played with that? Have you tried to play with cereal?
To flavor the milk. Yeah, so that's absolutely something you can do. I just highly recommend making sure that whatever you are using to strain is like a super bag cheesecloth. You really want to make sure there's no little bits of anything left in the milk itself. Same goes for like if you're infusing your spirit with something, if you're creating a syrup, you really want things that don't have anything left in it with a good consistency. I did for this one, the strawberry syrup. I watered it down a little bit to have it be more of a regular simple syrup consistency, because that's what's going to help this move. If you have any little particulates that are kind of left over, it's going to kind of just clog up the system and go that much slower. It's already a slow process, so you don't want to slow it down anymore by putting a bunch of extras in there. But yeah, you can absolutely flavor the milk. I find that it doesn't necessarily add a ton of flavor in the final product as much as just messing around with the base ingredients of your punch, your base spirit, your syrup, your citrus, but you can kind of double up that way, right? You could make a cereal syrup and have cereal milk and have a really fun kind of twofer in that way.
I mean, that sounds like a good combo. It sounds like drinking breakfast.
Right?
I will enjoy it. How many ounces do you put for one serving of the punch?
Yeah, I usually do 4 ounces as one serving punch. Yeah. You can do a smaller 3 ounces, but 4 ounces is about what kind of your standard cocktail would be for this guy.
Okay, great. I don't think we have any more questions for now, Naomi. So we did just as a little recap for everyone following us. We went through the process of making a clarified milk punch without any specific tools that require only a syrup, a spirit base, a lemon juice, milk, and spices. So only 5 ingredients, correct? We went through a fresh fruit syrup with not using any heating process with just sugar and fruit. And the last steps was to make vinegar, which actually I've learned something with you today. I knew wine vinegar, I didn't know about fruit vinegars, but requires just using scraps from fruits, so 0 waste, or just fresh fruit, sugar, and water. Correct?
That's it.
That's it. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us, Naomi?
No, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has tuned in or who's tuning in after the fact. And thank you as well, Xavier, for being my co-host and asking some really great questions. And thank you to Portland Cocktail Week for putting this whole thing on.
Thank you very much, Naomi. We just have a last question that just popped up. Can you play with ABV in your punch?
A little bit. Yeah, you do want, you can play around with like splitting that like 750 in terms of the ratio with something lower ABV. Just be aware of sugar content because you are also adding simple syrup. Generally, things that are lower ABV tend to be because they also have sugar in them. So that's just something to be aware of. And you do want to make sure you have a good consistency or viscosity that doesn't become too thick when you are making the punch. So absolutely, you can play around with it. You can't go like too crazy if you're using something like you know, like a liqueur or like an amaro or something like that. But certainly, if you're using, you know, a sherry as well, that'll work because you're not adding too much extra sugar or viscosity. So that's just kind of the place where you have to keep an eye when playing with low ABV in this case. But wow, now I want to make sherry milk punch.
I'll take it.
That was really good.
Anyway, if we don't have any more questions, I would like to say thank you, Naomi Levy, for this amazing presentation and showing us sometimes cocktails can be complicated, techniques can be complicated, and I think you really bring us back to the simple way to make it, and it works. It just takes a bit of patience, but why not try it at home? Why not try it at work? And most important thing is what is the result? And the result, I think, looks really, really tasty. Once again, my name is Xavier Herit. I'm a brand ambassador for Grand Marnier. It was our session with how to make different techniques in a most simple way. Thank you very much, Portland Cocktail Week, for having us. And Naomi, enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy your cocktails because they are on your side.
Thank you. I know. I wish I had more people to share them with, but sometime soon, I hope.
Soon. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy your Tuesday. Bye.
Bye.
And the live stream is out. You guys are awesome. What an amazing class.